Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and this is Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle, your host once again. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications, leave a comment, check out our website, www.legendofsuperstitionmountains.com. We're through the rendezvous and moving forward. We'll have those dates for next year's rendezvous in 2026 here probably in the next month or so, but until then, we're back to traditional regular story time. Now, today's story was a bit different. It was one I picked out, and I know I really like to avoid the stories that I can't verify a lot. And what made this one even a little more unverifiable is that I found the story in both Oscar Branson and Pennington's files, and they both seem to have kind of reservations about there's nothing they could do other than a couple people had mentioned the story. They couldn't verify much on it, and you'd want to verify something in names and this and that, and you'll understand as we go on. But it was a difficult story, but it's an interesting story. Now, this story takes place in I think it was the late 1880s, early 1890s in Nevada. Nevada had become a state, I think, 1886. And so it had to obtain statehood. It was also gold country along with California and some of central Arizona and other areas, Colorado. And the story is of a gentleman that comes into town and he brings in some rocks, and they have a significant amount of gold locked in them. There's some visible gold. And he goes to the assayer's office, and they're like, yeah, there's some decent gold in this. And he basically was like, I'm not really a prospector. I found these rocks. Is this really gold? What's in here? And they tried talking to him. He didn't really give much. His last name was Edwards, and his first name was an initial, M. So M. Edwards is in town, and he drops off some gold. Well, about 4 or 5 weeks later, M. Edwards comes in again with some more, and it's always like 3, 4, 5 pieces, the size of a fist or larger. And he brings them in, and they assay him, and then he goes to the general store, gets more supplies, and then he goes to the bank and makes a deposit, and then he goes off again. Well, after he's done this several times, a number of people are noticing, saying this guy comes in and the gossip's running. So wonder what he's doing, where he's finding this. So they note the way he's leaving town, and they figure what they'll do is incrementally just try to follow him out and kind of look at the area and see where he's going off to. Now, this is out of Virginia City. So he comes in the next time. They go to follow him out. They say they got to a certain point. They lost visibility of him. They couldn't see him for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then they could never pick him up again. And I said it just seemed impossible, like he vanished. They wondered if he knew they'd been following him, which then again they thought, well, okay, we'll send a couple guys out and we'll try it again and kind of catch him on the way. The next time, he doesn't even pass that way. He goes out of town a different direction, so they figure he knows we're following him. So they continue this pattern. He comes in for 3 or 4 pieces. He cashes them in, he loads up, and they follow him. They get him in a canyon at one point. They feel like it's a bit of a box canyon, and they're going to see where he goes. Either he doesn't come out and the mine's there, or he comes out and they can see him coming out of the area, and he just vanishes. So they go down in to look for him. Figure we're going to have to confront him and so forth and ask him what he's doing and so forth. And they get down in, and they could see where he'd been, and then it just peters out and there's nothing. And they were like, it's just literally like this guy floated off into the air and he just isn't there anymore. So they figure that he knows they're following him. He must be pretty smart. He was well-spoken, articulate. They said if you saw him, you wouldn't think he was a prospector or out there. He was pretty well-dressed, a gentleman. But they said he kept coming in from with this ore. So they finally went out and they got a Navajo tracker. And this Navajo, they said, hey, we want you to track this guy and figure out where he's going. But he can't see you at all. So they're really, because he keeps bringing in, and the content in this gold is just amazing to them. They're thinking, so they've tried to approach him, but he just is like, I don't know, I find these rocks occasionally. I don't have a mine. I'm not mining anything. I don't know what to think, but sorry, and so they're pretty frustrated. He doesn't happen in the saloons or the brothels or any place. Just comes in, gets his supplies, stops by the bank, and leaves town. So they send the Navajo out. He comes back to report and says the guy, he kind of tracked him back to where he's going. He has a cabin, small cabin, and he tells them about where and says, I'll take you out there. But he says he goes in there. He said, I watched him for a couple days, and he never leaves. He just goes in. He comes out once in a while, tends his horses, gets some water, goes back inside. He said he never leaves. So I don't know what he's just living there. So they go out. Navajo shows them where they're at. They spend probably 4 or 5 days watching from a ridge, and he never goes anywhere. He just stays at the cabin. At one point, they just have to give up. They can't sit out there for 4 or 5 weeks. So they come back into town. Eventually he shows back in town. He's got more of this rock. They're thinking, man, we're going to have to find a way to pin down, see where he's going and what he's doing. It can't be far or somewhere on the way or back, but whatever he's doing, we're going to have to figure it out. So they hire a couple of cowboys, guys that had been working around town. They said, look, we'll set you up. We're going to supply you. I want you to sit over here, and we want you to keep an eye on him and tell us whether or not he comes or goes. So those guys go out. They watch the cabin. They basically say he does the same thing the Navajo said. And he said he arrives. He has a little bit of an outbuilding that he has the horses in and stuff. And they say he brings his 2 horses in. He unloads, goes inside. He comes out occasionally, but he doesn't really go anywhere. So they're trying to figure it out. He must have built the cabin on whatever he's working on. And he's working inside the cabin, and he has, regardless of what it is, if there's a shaft or what it is, he's working on it inside. There's no other explanation. So they tell the cowboys, we want you to go out, keep an eye on him. One of you come back in town if you see him leave or anything happens. And they start kind of between themselves talking about this. So they finally haven't heard from the cowboys. The guy shows up in town. Mr. Edwards, M. Edwards, and he cashes in some gold, stops at the bank, gets his supplies, goes back. So they go out, find no sign of the cowboys. They look around where the cowboys had camped. There's no real sign that they'd even been camped there. So now they're curious, did the cowboys just disappear? Did they get tired of sitting out there? Or did something happen to them? So now they just continue to become more intrigued. They don't know what to even think. They're so intrigued about what to do to find this guy and figure out where he's going. It has to be in the cabin. So they finally go out and they decide, we're going to get a group of us together. We're going to go down and say, hey, knock on the door and talk to the guy. And at least they could peek inside. But they figure we're going to take this opportunity. They've said he's never seemed to have carried a rifle or a shotgun or anything. So they figure we're just going to go down and kind of try to be friendly, but the idea is what he's bringing out of there, he's just bringing out incrementally, but we need to find this out. So, good people do bad and wrong things. So they go down, they get there, the horses aren't there, so they figure, oh, he's went off to the mine. So they decide, we're going to sit up on the ridge. They sit up on the ridge for 3-4 days. No one appears. They finally decide to go down to the cabin. They open the door, and there's just a very neat, well cared for cabin. A bed, a stove, some pots and pans. There's several books. One of them is the Bible. They say it's just pretty immaculate, clean, and neat. They look around. There's no sign of anything he'd been digging there. They don't know where he's went. They decide to send a couple people back to town. They say nobody in town's heard from him. Now they're getting curious. They stay there for a number of days. They go back to town because they don't even know where he's at. They're feeling a bit foolish. So once they get back to town, the decision is made, well, something might have happened to him, so maybe this gives us an excuse to look through the area more thoroughly. So they get a group of people together. They go down back to the cabin. Cabin is absolutely the same. It appears he is gone. The horses are gone. They look around, don't know what to think, and then they start the next process. Start tearing up floorboards, taking apart the cabin. They can't find any shaft, anything, nothing's hidden in there. They got no idea what he was doing. They look around, there's no prospecting tools, no picks, nothing like that. We had a little small garden out back, but they have no idea where he was getting the gold, how he was getting in and out of there, what was going on. They pretty much disassemble the place. Then one day, one of the men noticed from the hearth, the fireplace, and the chimney, they find several rocks and find it has that. It's almost the same type of rock, and it has some free gold in it. And they grab a couple of these, so they go, it has to come from the area, and they continue that search. It said they never found any gold other than what they found from those rocks that must have been pulled out of the chimney. They had no idea. Now, it got a little more intriguing because the general store, M. Edwards, was known as Green. And the bank said his name was Smith. And they were just totally confused because each different entity he dealt with, he used a different name. Finally, the bank got a wire transfer or something to move the funds. There was probably $700 or $800. And that was from a gentleman by name Mr. Williams from Pennsylvania. So it appears as whatever Edwards or Williams or whoever he was found some gold, and he continued to get the gold. He had probably stashed some. He had a bank account. He was moving money out of there. And then when he either had worked enough or had worked out whatever he was working, just decided to quietly move on. And he left all these guys completely flustered. In the opinion of both Pennington and Branson, they said, because no one could figure out who he was, how much gold he got, it was just a story of, just like we know from the assayer, we know from the bank, we know from various people, he was doing this, but there was nothing intriguing. He wasn't a bad guy. He was just almost a non-entity. He passed through town politely, went back to his place, and then disappeared. Now you wonder how many people in the West were like that. Were cognizant enough to know people might be after me and all. And like they said, he never had a firearm or a gun or anything on him. They said it was just almost unbelievable that he was able to operate and do that. Probably part of it was he just kept them curious. How was it happening? Fortunately for him, no really bad guys, but again, in the back of their minds, what happened to the cowboys? Maybe he was able to take care of business and none of them realized it, and those cowboys were buried out there. There was so many gossip and rumors around him. So I found it an intriguing story. There's nothing you can point to, nothing you can do, but I always wonder, because there are several Lost Dutchman stories similar, of people who were almost unknown who went in the mountains, made a number of trips, and then basically just end up leaving. And you don't know if they found something or not. Did they just work their time out, or what happened? They just up and leave. And this was a good story about that out of Nevada. So I hope everybody enjoyed that, because I found it intriguing. There's nothing you can attach to really delve into it. And I think Oscar Branson said he'd heard the story from a couple local people and in his travels, and he thought it was very interesting, but he could get nowhere. Pennington doesn't say about getting anywhere. He just talks about the story, and he might have even got it from Branson. Who knows? So I couldn't find nothing. I can't verify this story in any way. It seems detailed enough and enough steps through it that there had to be something to it at the time. And it is gold country out there in a very busy area. But yeah, just no way to track down Mr. Williams, Edwards, Jones, Blacksmith, whoever he was. So there you go. There's the story for this week. We had a great time at the rendezvous. I hope everybody else is going to have a great week. Hopefully we're done with our rain here in Arizona, so we can get out in the mountains without having to be washed away in a little flash flood down the canyons. But catch us on Fridays for our lives, because we're back to those pretty steadily towards till the end of the year. And catch us every day with This Day in the Superstition Mountains. Until then, thank you for watching. And always remember, I'm Wayne Tuttle. You're not. And this was Chasing Legends.